Good morning, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. You are very welcome to join us on The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. It's Victory Day in Moscow, and President Putin is preparing to address his people ahead of the event that marks the Soviet Union's defeat of Nazi Germany back in World War II. But a warning shot across the bows this morning from the Defence Secretary and an observation about what may happen to Russia if they carry on as they are in Ukraine. We're live in Moscow's Red Square and we'll bring you the parade as it happens, plus President Putin's speech, and that's around 8 o'clock-ish, joined by the former head of the British Army as well, that's General Lord Danet, of course, here in the studio to talk us through it. And we'll get the view of a current member of Russia's state Duma, who's a chief critic of the Russian opposition. Plus, those beers with Kia headlines just aren't going away. We're joined today by the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, to find out what he thinks. It's Monday, the 9th of May. As Russia's leader prepares for Victory Day celebrations in Moscow, an observation from the Defence Secretary about what may happen if Putin carries on as he is.
In Ukraine, there's tension over what new plans Russia may have in store, as the president here confirms 60 killed in a Russian airstrike on a school.
Pressure grows as Sir Keir Starmer pulls out of a keynote speech after a weekend of headlines over Beergate claims. Protocol problem were live in Belfast as the Northern Ireland Secretary appeals to political parties to form an executive after Sinn Féin's victory.
Hunger pains. I'm at a community kitchen here in Harrow as new research reveals that 1 in 7 adults are now struggling to eat every day.
Jodie Comer for help.
Killing it at the BAFTAs, Jodie Comer and Sean Bean win big. Also coming up on the programme for you this morning, wherever you're watching us around the world, from Ireland to Sri Lanka, we reveal new details about the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and discuss her health with the royal commentator and author Robert Jobson. That's at 9:45.
I've got a good idea. Just you keep me near. I'll be so good for you. Be so good.
Tributes for Dennis Waterman, the star of Minder and The Sweeney, who has died at the age of 74. Hello everyone, a very good morning. President Putin is preparing to lead this morning's celebrations, marking the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Troops, tanks, rockets and missiles will parade through Moscow's Red Square, and Putin could give an update on his intentions in Ukraine. The Defence Secretary, meanwhile, has fired a warning shot across the bows of Russia's leader with an observation about what may happen to Russia if they carry on as they are in Ukraine. Well, Victory Day celebrates the Soviet Union's role in defeating Nazi Germany, marking the anniversary of the end of the Second World War. The main event is a major parade in Moscow's Red Square to showcase Russia's military force, overseen by senior Kremlin officials. The exact scale of events isn't confirmed, but Russia's defence minister has said military parades will be held in 28 Russian cities, involving nearly 65,000 people and 2,400 types of weapon. Meantime, President Zelensky has accused the Russian army of replicating Nazi atrocities.
Росія забула все, що було дуже важливим для переможців.
Russia has forgotten everything that was important to the victors of World War II, but Ukraine and the whole free world will remind it, so that then no one will forget, so that really important words, never again, which are repeated all over the free world every year on the days of remembrance of the victims of World War II, regain their weight again. I am grateful to all our defenders who are defending and saving Ukraine from the modern descendants of that old evil.
Well, our Security and Defence editor, Deborah Haynes, is standing by in Kiev for us this morning. Hello to you, Deborah. I wonder if we could talk about that parade in Moscow as well as the place where you are at the moment. One wonders what opportunities President Putin might take during his speech.
Yes, well, the speech is going to sound very different to the one that he probably had hoped to write, given that this invasion of Ukraine was meant to involve a lightning strike on the capital, Kyiv, with the capital falling within days. That did not happen. Instead, you had this rather undignified Russian retreat and then regrouping down in the east. Of course, President Putin will be speaking about the special military operation, as he calls it, here today. Victory Day is the most important military day in the calendar of the year. It's a hugely important moment, and he will want to be grasping that moment, achieving some kind of control over the narrative here that things are going to plan in Ukraine when clearly they're not. And the big question, of course, is what he says about throwing forwards. Is he going to be signalling a greater mobilisation of forces in Russia to come here to fight in Ukraine? Is he going to start using that word war when he talks about the operation that is happening here? And is he going to give any further details about the ultimate strategy, what he will deem as success? These are all questions that people don't yet know the answers to, but we'll be listening very keenly to what he says.
Thank you. Of course, we are covering the events in Moscow for you throughout the day today, and the former head of the British Army will be with us here in the studios to talk us through events. 9 o'clock, going to be hearing from the Defence Secretary, who is making a speech, and we will be taking that for you live as well. Representing the government this morning is the Universities Minister, Michelle Donelan. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme this morning. Lots to talk about. I want to start with Northern Ireland, though. It's at a stalemate. As a result, it's hemorrhaging money. There's no working government. What's the British government going to do?
Well, our priority, of course, is to deal with the problem head on. We have a duty towards the people of Northern Ireland, who are a fundamental part of the UK. As you point out, the Northern Ireland Protocol is not working. And I believe, the concerns about that were reflected in the recent result that we saw in the election. We're working at pace to resolve this. Nothing's off the table, Kay.
So what are you going to do?
Well, we are negotiating with the EU to find a solution. As we've said, nothing is off the table here. If we need to, we will through Article 16, but we want to try and negotiate as our first priority.
Scrapping the protocol?
As I said, that is on the table as one of the options. Our first attempt here is to try and negotiate with the EU. We want to resolve this at pace. We want fundamentally a functioning executive within Northern Ireland for the people of Northern Ireland. That is simply not possible unless we can resolve the issues around the protocol.
So you are considering scrapping the protocol?
Well, that's been government policy for a while now. We've said very openly nothing is off the table. Our priority here is that the people of Northern Ireland resolving this problem, getting a functioning executive up and running.
OK, but we hear from our Ireland correspondent of the 90 people just elected to the Assembly, 54 of them are in favour of the protocol in some form. So you'll be going against the will of those that have just been elected.
Well, as we know, the DUP have said that they won't sit as part of the executive unless the issues around the protocol are resolved. I didn't say that we were definitely doing that. I said it was on the table as a potential option. What our go-to begin with is to negotiate with the EU and try and resolve this problem and find a workable solution.
Yeah, but as I've just made the point, up to almost 2/3 of those that have just been elected want the protocol to remain in some form.
Well, yes, that doesn't mean scrapping the protocol, finding a solution. We are negotiating with the EU to find a workable solution. That is our primary objective. However, should that not work, we would explore all options, because our goal here is to ensure we have a working and functioning executive in Northern Ireland for the people of Northern Ireland.
Even if that was against the will of those that have just been elected?
Well, as I've said multiple times here, we will not have a functioning executive unless we can resolve this problem. But I think what we need to be doing is negotiating, trying to find a tangible solution, and then we can discuss with you whether that solution is one that is popular or not.
What does that tangible solution look like?
Well, that is what we're trying to negotiate. I can't outline the solution at the moment because we are working at pace with the EU to try and negotiate that.
I mean, it has been an issue for some considerable time now, as we have seen. So I'm guessing there are some strides that have been made forward. What do they look like?
Well, at the moment, we have not made the progress that we would like, obviously, because otherwise the problem would be resolved. We've invested a great deal of time and money into the Northern Ireland Protocol, but it isn't working in the way that we want it to. For the people of Northern Ireland, we are negotiating, we're working at pace, and we will be, over the coming days, trying to rapidly find a solution working with the EU.
OK. If it's that urgent, and you're underlining that it is that urgent, of course, we do have the Queen's speech tomorrow. We could introduce, or you could introduce a bill to override the Northern Ireland Protocol, couldn't you?
Well, look, I'm not going to reveal what's in the full Queen's speech tomorrow.
It might be in the Queen's speech. So it
I'm
might
not
be in the
going
Queen's
to
speech.
reveal
Are you
what's
ruling
in
it out?
I'm not going to reveal either way what's in the Queen's speech. That would break all protocol. What I am saying is that our first step here is to try and negotiate with the EU and find a solution, okay?
OK. But I suppose the people of Northern Ireland, good people of Northern Ireland who will be watching you this morning, will be looking for some guidance on this stalemate that is costing not only the British government, but also the people of Northern Ireland. They've not had a government, an assembly in place for some considerable time. It looks as though the DUP won't want to work with the Sinn Féin, who won the most seats over the weekend. So they'll find themselves in a position where potentially they're going to have another election again in 6 months' time. It's an absolute mess. You've got the Queen's speech tomorrow. You could take the opportunity to introduce a new bill that would help out the people of Northern Ireland.
Well, I don't believe that the DUP have actually said that, Kay. I believe the DUP have said that they wouldn't resume their seats unless we resolve the issues around the protocol, which is what we are trying to do.
Yeah, and that's what I just said.
Well, no, I think what you actually said is that the DUP wouldn't work with Sinn Féin. That's not what they've said. They've said that we have to resolve the issues around the protocol. That's what we're trying to do, work at pace and sort this problem out for the people of Northern Ireland. I think we're in agreement here, Kay. We want to resolve this problem.
I'm not sure we are. So just to be clear, you're saying that the DUP would be willing, your understanding, British government's understanding is that the DUP would be willing to work with Sinn Féin as long as issues over the Northern Ireland Protocol were resolved. Are you sure?
No, I can't speak for the DUP.
No,
of course I can't.
You
I'm
can't.
a representative from the Conservative government. But what I can say is that their clear red line that they have been very clear on is that they will not resume their seats unless we resolve the protocol. So that has to be our absolute priority.
OK. How long do you think it's going to take before there's some sort of resolution?
I'm not going to put an arbitrary figure of a number of days. That would be foolish, I think, on my behalf. But what I will say is that we're working at pace. You know, we want to get this done as quickly as possible. We want a functioning executive in Northern Ireland, and we understand the extreme urgency of this.
I thought this deal was oven ready. What happened?
Well, yes, it was. The Northern Ireland Protocol is not working in the way that we had intended it to do so. And we've been very open and frank about that one.
OK, but is it not the fault of the British government? You know, we did a deal, we signed the deal. We then said, actually, it's not working quite as we'd wanted to. The European Union came to the table to change it in some form. We found out that we were going to have a border down the Irish Sea, even though the Prime Minister said that was absolutely not going to happen. And if we were given all sorts of bits of paper, just rip them up, he said, and throw them in the bin. And here we are, more than a year, 2 years after, 18 months after, when we were told we were having an oven-ready team, everything was going to be sorted. The people of Northern Ireland don't know from day to day how much it's going to cost them to live.
Look, the level of bureaucracy that is being placed on Northern Ireland's businesses is not acceptable.
But whose fault is that?
Well, look, the protocol is not working in the way that we had intended it to do so. And that is why we are trying to negotiate and find a solution. You know, there's no point rehashing where we were a year ago. The EU is obviously not acting in the way that we thought they would in terms of the Northern Ireland Protocol. And we are now rapidly trying to find a solution to this, to resolve the issue, to then get a functioning executive in Northern Ireland. Brandon Lewis, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland in the British government, is going over to Northern Ireland today. I know that across government, this is a priority for us.
How do we feel about a border referendum?
Well, I think let's not overcook this one as of yet. You know, even Sinn Féin said it would be sort of 5 years off their priority in the election. My understanding is that they campaign primarily on issues like cost of living, not on a referendum, and over 50% of votes were actually for unionist parties or parties that didn't want constitutional change.
Yeah, but they aren't in power and Sinn Féin is, so I put it to you again. We could be looking some way down the track, I'll give you that, at potentially this Prime Minister, if he wins a second term in office, being the guy that oversaw the breakup of the Union.
I think that's a bit speculative and as you say, a long way down the track in terms of a topic for conversation. This election does not indicate that there is a groundswell or a dramatic change in terms of wanting a split from the Union from the people of Northern Ireland, and the votes cast demonstrate that. In fact, they demonstrate a commitment to the Union, which is at the heart of the work of my government's policy. And we will continue with that and try and sort out the issues around the protocol and protect the United Kingdom.
Yeah, you say it's not a topic of conversation, but I was in Dublin over the weekend and that was the only thing they were talking about.
Look, there will always be some people that want to progress with this agenda. What I think I said was that the votes cast do not indicate that a majority of people now want to see the breakup of the United Kingdom from those living in Northern Ireland.
Let's move to your brief. Head teachers have said they're anticipating large increases in their school energy bills, adding that they've been forced to cut spending on teaching assistants and lesson time. How are you going to help them?
Well, we are increasing school budgets by next academic year. School budgets will have gone up by 7% per pupil. There are also a package of support out there to help them with things like energy and pooling resources. But obviously, we know that the global fight against inflation, the global cost of living crisis is going to be hard for everybody. And that's why, as a government, we put in place £22 billion worth of support. We are considering what else to do. And we are continuing to work with schools on not just this issue, but many issues.
And you feel that the amount of money that you've increased their budget for next year, next year, is going to be enough to cover fuel costs?
Well, of course, we will continue to monitor the situation, but we have increased school budgets substantially, as I said, but it will be up 7% per pupil. And we'll continue to monitor the situation and work with schools to assist them through this and through many other things. You know, in the Queen's speech as well, we're also launching a schools bill, which focuses on attendance and safeguarding and standards. And that is designed to ensure that every child, no matter where they're born, in England, can have a fantastic education, and that's part of our levelling up agenda.
OK, just before I let you go, Bia with Keir, if he gets fined, should he step down?
Well, that's a decision for Keir, not for me.
What do you think?
What my constituents are saying is that this whole thing smacks of sheer hypocrisy, given the relentless focus he has placed on...
What do you think?
Partygate. Well, I think this is a decision for him. He's going to have to search his soul after making this a top priority over the last few months at the expense of key issues like rising cost of living, etc. But look, this is a decision for him. My takeaway is that it does smack of sheer hypocrisy, given his.
Did you mean to say takeaway then?
Well, there you go. Yeah. Very
it's
quick.
Good to see you.
Very quick.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye, thank you. Talked a lot about Northern Ireland there, didn't we? The Northern Ireland Protocol. What is going to happen next? Might have some reference in the Queen's speech tomorrow. All of that to come and to discuss throughout the course of the programme. Before all of that, let's find out exactly what we're talking about with none other than David Blevins.
In terms of the substantive business, no one's anticipating that the DUP will turn up and facilitate the election of Michelle O'Neill as a nationalist First Minister by nominating a unionist Deputy First Minister. They may have championed a hard Brexit that resulted in the Northern Ireland Protocol, creating that border in the Irish Sea, but they're now demanding serious concessions from the UK government on that issue before they commit to restoring power sharing. So the Northern Ireland Secretary, Brandon Lewis, is likely to meet with all of the parties to try to figure out, is there a way for the DUP concerns to be addressed adequately enough for them to return to the devolved government. But remember, of the 90 people elected to this new assembly, 54 of them are content to see the protocol implemented. They see it as the least worst option. And that makes it very difficult for the government to change things, because they could make it even more difficult to see a power-sharing administration formed at Stormont. Between the election campaign and the complicated count process, it's been a busy few days for the political parties, but the work might be only just beginning.
Meantime, looking at some of the front pages for you this morning, the Telegraph leads with UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, who's set to accuse Mr Putin of mirroring the fascism and tyranny of 70 years ago. The Guardian goes on the cost of living crisis, reporting a survey has found more than 2 million Britons have missed meals in the last month as they can't afford it. Many families are facing another energy price shock as prices doubled for 1 in 4 households. That's on the front of the Mirror. Boris Johnson's planning to remove hundreds of EU laws, which he says will boost the economy. That's according to The Times. The Sun pays tribute to Minder and the Sweeney tough guy, Dennis Waterman, who has died at the age of 74. So lots of talk there about the cost of living crisis. A reminder that next week we'll be taking the show on the road for a special series of programmes. I'm going back to my roots and finding out how the good people of Wigan feel about the cost of living crisis. Do let me know if you'd like to get involved by sending me a tweet. And that's going to be here on Sky News at the usual time from the 16th of May. Many of you have already got in touch, but always great to hear from you. Use the hashtag @KBurley and we will reach out to you, I promise. Now, as new research shows a dramatic rise in the number of people struggling to buy food, we'll speak to a single mum worried about the rising cost of living. As the Labour leader faces more pressure over Beergate, we'll be joined by the Shadow Health and Social Care Secretary, Wes Streeting. And then after 8, the former Chief of the General Staff, Lord Richard Dannett, is with us here in the studio as Russia marks Victory Day. Also making news for us this morning, at least 44 people have died after their boat capsized off the coast of Western Sahara. 12 people have been detained under Morocco's migration laws. Authorities there say 16 bodies have been recovered. From today, face masks will no longer be required in schools in Wales. School staff and secondary school pupils have been required to wear them when moving around buildings and in communal areas. Boris Johnson has eaten Fukushima popcorn given to him by the Japanese Prime Minister after restrictions on the import of produce grown near the old nuclear plant were lifted. The Food Standards Agency decided to scrap a threshold that limits Japanese imports that contain more than 100 becquerels, a measure of radioactivity, per kilogramme. 2 Palestinians have been killed in separate incidents in the occupied West Bank, hours after police apprehended 2 Palestinian men suspected of killing 3 Israelis last week. Israeli soldiers shot dead a Palestinian near the barrier with the West Bank, and another was killed after infiltrating a Jewish settlement inside the occupied territory. A new report by MPs says the rise of online influencers has exposed regulatory gaps which leave children at risk of exploitation, and says advertising rules are being flouted. Well, the report by the Digital, Culture, Media and Sport Committee called on the government to strengthen employment and advertising laws. MPs say children, parents and schools must be given, I'm not sure what that picture is there, guys, let's just work with it, given more support in developing media literacy. The report urges the government to conduct a study into the influencer ecosystem so it can be properly regulated.
We can see from what the Advertising Standards Authority tell us that literally they almost have no sort of grip at all on this sector, that they know that 2/3 of adverts are effectively not even designed as such or designated as such. And we know as well that there is no protections in place for children.
Well, new management is set to be appointed for the convenience store chain McColl's. Rival bidders Morrison's and the EG Group are in a race to buy more than 1,000 stores owned by the brand. EG Group, owned by billionaire Easter Brothers, has been poised to buy McColl's, but Morrison's matched its 11th hour improved offer on Sunday. TV BAFTAs took place in London last night, featuring its first full audience in 2 years. Jodie Comer picked up Best Actress for her role in COVID-19 drama Help and paid tribute to the care workers who assisted in the production of the series.
The biggest thank you of all goes to all of the carers and the Dementia Society who helped us in our research. They were so incredibly gracious and generous with their time.
Channel 4's It's a Sin missed out on a best miniseries to BBC drama Time, starring Sean Bean and Stephen Graham.
I'm not being funny, but no one, everyone says we weren't expecting this.
We weren't.
On my Mars life, we weren't expecting this.
The Scousers are coming, aren't they now? Concerns over the privatisation of broadcasters was a common theme throughout the night.
The BBC and Channel 4 are things that we have to hold tight and fight for inch, every inch.
The next Mo Gilligan or the next Judy Love or like whoever like can watch us and say, whoa, that's what I want to do. Do you know what I mean? So that's why we have to save it.
Ncuti Gatwa, your new Doctor Who.
And gracing the stage was also the star of Netflix Sex Education, who'll be taking over from Jodie Whittaker as the Time Lord.
I'm feeling very, very excited, very honoured. I think it's such an honour, this role. It's a British institution and it means so much to so many people.
Tributes have been coming in for Dennis Waterman, the veteran actor known for shows such as Minder and The Sweeney, who's died at the age of 74.
I've got a good idea. Just you keep me near. I'll be so good for you.
You're singing along, aren't you? Waterman starred as Terry McCann in Minder from the late 70s, running around the criminal underworld of West London for 7 series. He also performed the show's theme tune, I Could Be So Good For You, which became a hit in the UK and also in Australia. Remember this?
What about that part in EastEnders?
They've already got a theme tune.
Mine's much better. Lots of things are happening in Albert Square.
Yes, thank you.
He was also the target of a caricature on the BBC series Little Britain, as you saw, where David Walliams impersonated him as a comically small man who would write the theme tune and sing the theme tune for his new job offers. Well, Matt Lucas, the other half of Little Britain, was among the first to leave tributes to Waterman, tweeting, I grew up watching Dennis Waterman's iconic performance in The Sweeney and Minder, his guest appearance in our Little Britain live show at Hammersmith Apollo, in which he hilariously duetted with David's absurd impersonation of him, remains the absolute highlight of my career. Well, League of Gentlemen actor Reece Shearsmith said, R.I.P. Dennis Waterman. When I worked with him on new tricks, he made me the best cups of tea. And, of course, I just spent the time grilling him about scars of Dracula. Quick look at the weather for you.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Southern Britain will be mostly fine today, but rain will spread through the north and south and also the west on strengthening winds. Mild but windy for many.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, this is cool. An unexpected sight in Kiev's underground yesterday. U2's Bono and The Edge. They performed a 40-minute concert. It's amazing. They performed alongside members of the popular Ukrainian group Antilita, I think, in a metro station currently used as a bomb shelter. The U2 frontman tweeted that he'd been invited to perform by President Zelensky as a show of solidarity with the Ukrainian people. It's the Flicks in Bricks The Sun provides, a miniature picture game inspired by animator Morgan Spencer's Lego adaptation of you remember we did Only Fools and Horses on Friday. Well, how many of these blockbusters can you guess right? Pretty tricky to see them. I was hoping they'd be a little bit bigger. Maybe they will for the next hour. Obviously, we've got this one, haven't we, Matt? I'm going to say that that has got to be a James Bond one, hasn't it? I would have thought, undoubtedly. And if we go up to the top left, I'm going to say that is Dirty Dancing. What do you think? That looks a bit Dirty Dancing to me, the water thing. And then over to the right-hand side, that is undoubtedly going to be Titanic. Those are my best guesses. Let me know what you think. Cool. A work of art. The Telegraph shows off Hamish Mackey's 11-foot sculptures, which have taken him a year to complete. The bronze hares will be unveiled at this year's Chelsea Flower Show. They're pretty cool, aren't they? Everything's cool today. And the Times pictures some rather fetching young men dressed in red, awaiting members of the 59 Club, a motorcycle association which was founded in 1962, which is celebrating, obviously, its 60th birthday. Meantime, let's take cue to Adam Parsons, should we? He's standing by in Moldova for us this morning. Excuse me. Hello to you. It's good to see you this morning. Talk us through the events behind you.
Yeah, well, this is the heart of the Moldovan capital. And as you can see, around us, you've got gatherings of hundreds and hundreds of people who are going to mark Victory Day. We expect this to number into the thousands. Now, why this is very significant is a lot of these people you can see, the ones wearing orange T-shirts, are here from the Communist Party. And there's been a lot of rules put in place around this parade to stop overt displays of support for Russia, despite the fact there are plenty of people in Moldova who are sympathetic to the Russian regime. And one of the things to look out for is a specific thing that's been banned. It's a ribbon called the St. George's ribbon. It's an orange and black stripes. Now, I've already seen one person wearing them. Police say they will arrest those who are wearing those ribbons. They are a sign, in a sense, memorialising, celebrating Russian military success. But what we are seeing is a lot of people wearing combinations of orange and black, effectively a tacit sign of support. We've also heard from the Moldovan government that they don't want to see any Zs. Well, we know how many times we've seen that as a sign of Russian support. Now, you might ask why. Why is Moldova so central to this story? Well, Moldova is caught in a very tricky position. It's got Ukraine all around its north, east and south. It's got Romania, European Union country, over to the west. But there's a region called Transnistria in the east of Moldova. And Transnistria is run by pro-Russian separatists. It's effectively been an autonomous, self-proclaimed area ever since the Soviet empire collapsed. Transnistria wants to get closer to Russia. There are fears that Putin, if he drives his way through the south of Ukraine, could create a land corridor to Transnistria, and wants to use events like this to foment discontent and to foment pro-Russian support.
OK, for now, thank you, Adam, thank you. Of course, we're hearing from President Putin. That's about 8 o'clock this morning, and then we'll also be hearing from our own Defence Secretary, and that is around about 9 a.m. It's called Victory Parade Day in Moscow. Joining us now is Evgeny Popov. He's an MP in Russia's State Duma from President Putin's party. Hello to you, sir. Thank you for joining us on the programme this morning. Why is the Kremlin bombing Ukraine?
It's not a simple question. We are not bombing Ukraine. We are talking only military infrastructure, and we're doing that for almost 2 months. And we're not going to attack civilians' infrastructure. We're not going to attack civilian people. And we are just fighting Nazism and neo-Nazism on Ukraine. And now we are on Red Square. It's last preparation for Victory Day parade here, and we are waiting for Mr. Putin speech here. And that's a wrong question which you asked me. We are not we are not bombing Ukraine. We are attacking only military infrastructure. We are doing demilitarization here.
So what about when theatres and schools are bombed and children are losing their lives and women are being raped and then murdered? Are you suggesting that they're neo-Nazis as well?
It's just huge hypocrisy that you're asking me this question just now. We are at war with Ukrainian Nazis about 8 years. And Ukrainian artillery was shelling Ukrainians and Donbass schools, hospitals, kindergartens for 8 years. Almost 14,000 people already killed by Ukrainian army. But you asking me about killed children just now, just after 8 years of war in Donbass. Of course, the Ukrainian army are using civilians as a life shield. It's like terrorist tactic, and of course we should fight them.
So are you suggesting that the Ukrainian military are using children as human shields, and that's why you're killing them?
We are not killing children. We are trying to save children. And you can see it in Mariupol, because all civilians are escaped Mariupol Azov steel plant. And now we can see how Azov battalion have used civilians, women, children, old people as a life shield, because they didn't do them a permission to go. They used them as a shield. All the world have seen that.
The theatre in Mariupol, where 1,000 children and women were hiding in the basement, they'd put in huge letters in front of the theatre, children in white letters, and it still took a direct hit. Up to 600 people died. What sort of special operation is it that means that that's acceptable?
Would you give me just one proof that 600 people have killed in Mariupol theater? I didn't see it. Any proof of that? Any. It's just Ukrainian Western propaganda. Of course, civilians are dying during this conflict, and many civilians, we know that. It's a huge tragedy, but a Russian army just attacked only military infrastructure, and we seen it every given day on the battlefield. Only military infrastructure. If Ukrainian army, Ukrainian neo-Nazi battalion didn't use civilians as a life shield, we will not to see any civilian casualties, or we will see less civilian casualties. They use just ISIS tactics. You can see it, unfortunately.
So if you don't accept that 600 people, at least 600 people died in the theatre in Mariupol, what do you think happened?
I don't know exactly. I haven't seen any proof, and you didn't see any proof that 600 civilians have died on Mariupol theater. I have seen that some civilians have covered in Mariupol theater's basements, but as I know, many of them are safe right now. Many of them are escaped this basement, and then they were evacuated to Russia, to Russian shelters.
What about the bombing of a maternity hospital, where we saw people were being stretchered out, and we were told that at least one of them was an actress, and it was fake blood? Is that your view?
We can see that Ukrainian army used a lot of civilian infrastructure as a base. They fight from hospitals, they fight from kindergartens, they fight from schools. That's why we can't understand exactly where civilians is, or where the military is, because Ukrainian army used a lot of civilian infrastructure as a military base, That's why you should get a real proof of what was happened with Mariupol Maternity Hospital, because we have seen an actress, and we have seen her alive a month after that. We have seen, all of us, we have seen her alive.
What does victory in Ukraine look like to you?
It's a difficult question, because we have to see a country near us on our border, which is not will be a direct threat to Russia, to Russian people, to Russian future. That's it. Because if you put NATO missiles on Ukrainian territory, it's going to be a direct threat to Russia, to Russian people. And we just trying to fight with this exact threat.
What would you like to say to the people of Finland whose government wants to join NATO?
They can do whatever they want. This is independent territory, and this is sovereign country. They are our neighbors, but they're not gonna put nuclear missiles on Finland's territory. Believe me, because you will not see not a nuclear Baltic after that. It's gonna be a new huge threat for the peace if Finland will join NATO and put nuclear missiles or some other NATO missiles on Finland's territory. I don't believe they're gonna do that.
But it's a sovereign nation. It's not. It's up to them, isn't it?
Of course, it's up to them. But you can do whatever you want if you are not threatening to your neighbors. Don't threaten your neighbors. Don't bully your neighbors. Live in peace with your neighbors, and everything will be good. I'm so sorry.
What Russia's doing with Ukraine? Yeah, isn't that what Russia's doing with Ukraine at the moment?
We are defending our territory. We are defending our country. We are defending our future from NATO, which is following our borders. And NATO is a direct threat for Russian people. It's a simple message. You have to understand it. Thank you very much.
What's your advice?
Thank you. Bye.
Sorry to interrupt.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. What's your advice to Western countries, other countries, who are... Is he still there? Guest is gone. There we are. Diana is standing by for us in Moscow. Hello, Diana, listening to a supporter of President Putin, a representative of the Duma. They're defending the situation in Ukraine.
Yeah. Yes, well, that's invariably what he's going to do. He's also the presenter of 60 Minutes, which is a daily, 3 times a day talk show, which is sort of one of the main pieces of propaganda, really, that you'll see on Russian state TV about what Russia still insists on calling this special military operation. So, of course, he's going to defend it, and you'll find very few people in this country who will speak publicly against it. That's why it's surprising that we still do manage to report voices that essentially dissent from what's going on here. But you're not going to find many of these here today on the stands in Red Square, which I am looking at. We've just arrived, and the parade is due to begin pretty soon. And we await to see what kind of a victory it is that Vladimir Putin chooses to declare. My sense is that he won't declare any victory now. That it is more the idea that victory is on its way, and he will draw parallels between the Soviets' defeat of Nazi Germany, their victory over Nazi Germany in 1945 in what Russia calls the Great Patriotic War, and say that victory will be ours in this scenario also drawing on the fact that the Soviets then were fighting Nazis, which of course is the justification, or in part one of the many justifications that Vladimir Putin has used for this offensive in Ukraine to justify going in again, that essentially they are fighting the same goal. So I don't think he's going to declare a wider war, but we shall have to see. It won't be a long speech, but it will be a key one.
OK, Fanai, thank you. As I said, hearing from President Putin around about 8 o'clock. Meantime, Shadow Health Secretary is with us now. Wes Streeting, good morning.
Good morning.
Talk to me about why, first of all, your leader has pulled out of a speech at the Institute for Government today.
No idea. I didn't check before coming on because I thought it was such a trivial thing. But the idea that, as I've obviously done a couple of these interviews this morning, the idea that Keir has been avoiding scrutiny when he's been out all weekend in front of cameras, celebrating those brilliant results we got in the local elections last week. You know, it's whether or not he's done an event, his diary changed all the time. It's kind of neither here nor there, really.
wouldn't it have been a perfect opportunity for him to clear the air with journalists and everyone else that wanted to hear what happened in April of last year?
Well, he's been doing that all weekend. He's been doing it consistently since he was first asked questions about Durham. And let's just remember this central fact, which is the police have looked at this before. They found no case to answer. No action was taken. There's no reason to think this time round will be any different. But what it will show is the stark contrast between Boris Johnson, who was fined, Boris Johnson, who lied about there being any events whatsoever under his own roof, Boris Johnson, who said all of that, despite the fact we now know that officials were wheeling in suitcases full of booze into Number 10. There is no comparison whatsoever between perfectly legitimate campaigning activity, which Keir has never denied, and the actions of Boris Johnson and the people who work for him, which was rule-breaking, lying, completely unacceptable. And the fact that Boris Johnson is still there, I think, is remarkable and depressing. And if Conservative MPs, last time I was on your programme, I said Conservative MPs have got to do the right thing, hold Boris Johnson to account. Well, they've failed to do that, but maybe last week's results in the local election campaign and the loss of hundreds of Conservative councillors might concentrate their minds so that if Tory MPs aren't going to do the right thing for the right reasons, maybe they'll do the right thing out of self-preservation.
Meantime, back to what your boss was up to. He told us at the time and subsequently that it was a spontaneous curry. From this document that we've seen that was leaked by a whistleblower who was obviously very upset by him and the actions of the party, it wasn't a spontaneous curry. It was planned. I think we've got it. We were told that Angela Rayner was not there. She was there. And we were told for months that she wasn't there. She was there. She was quite obviously there. Her name was on the list. We were told that he returned to work afterwards. It looks from the briefing notes that would suggest otherwise. And we were told that 15 people were there. And one has to ask, why was that reasonably necessary?
Well, two things. One is it was a genuine cock-up, a genuine mistake to say that Angela Rayner wasn't there. But let's just look at this.
But her initials are there. Her initials are on the thing.
But it was a genuine mistake, Kate. And let's just bear in mind, there would be nothing to gain whatsoever for saying that Keir Starmer was at this event and Angela Rayner wasn't, not least because no rules were broken. This is perfectly legitimate. And as for this, I mean, one of the things I thought was remarkable, and, you know, I mean, credit to the Mail's imagination, they've managed to turn a perfectly normal ops note for a visit to during an election into some kind of great revelation. What do they think people happen, that we go on visits and just wander around the town, like in the hope we might just do something useful?
We were told it was spontaneous, the food. It's there, it's on the ops note, takeaway from Spice Lounge. We were told
I mean,
he couldn't get food from anywhere else. He went to the hotel, there was food available at the hotel.
I am, you know, breaking news. Keir Starmer has dinner. Keir Starmer needs to eat dinner. Of course they've arranged dinner, and you know I'm not surprised that it's there.
You told us that that Angela Rayner wasn't there. All of this was planned. You know, as with all things, it's never the cock-up; it's always the cover-up.
But hang on a second, Kate. Are we seriously saying that we believe that Keir Starmer and his team have planned an event and planned a meal in there which they knew to be breaking the rules? I think this is ridiculous. Like, Keir Starmer is someone who practices what he preaches.
Why didn't he
He's
say that
honest.
at the time?
And it's perfectly reasonable to have a dinner. This is perfectly permissible within the rules. And I've got no doubt that after the dinner he went back to work, because anyone who's ever worked on an election campaign knows that you work late into the evening. And I know from working with Keir Starmer, he works late into the evening all the time. Okay. And I mean, look, the police will look to draw their conclusion
and they've
again.
decided to look
but
at it
I
again.
don't think people out there in the country think that Keir Starmer is the kind of bloke who goes around breaking the rules and getting smashed on an election campaign, breaking the rules. I mean, this is why I just think this is all stretching the boundaries of credibility. And I'm frustrated because all this is about is trying to drag.
Let me get a word in edgeways. If it was permissible, why didn't he say it? Why did he not agree? Why did he not tell us about all of this to start with, instead of coming up with some cock and bull story?
But I don't think that's a fair characterisation.
We were told that it was an impromptu,
I don't think that's fair.
An impromptu curry because he couldn't get food anywhere else. We know that that's not true. We were told that Angela Rayner was not there. We can see that wasn't true. So
but it was in the Angela Rayner case, it was a genuine mistake, and the Labour Party held its hands up and said, "Look, we're really sorry.
Wasn't he corrected
we
straight
got
away
this
rather
wrong.
than months
we got
later?"
This wrong." Well, you know, obviously someone didn't check at the time, and that was stupid. And the Labour Party apologised and held our hands up, and I think that's the right way to behave. And look, that is a stark contrast, by the way, with Boris Johnson, who lied regularly and repeatedly, denied there were any events in Number 10 whatsoever, any rule breaking whatsoever. And then we found out not only were rules broken under his own roof, he was there and he was breaking the rules. So look, the police are looking at this now. I don't think they'll draw any different conclusions to the one they did before, but they are looking at it. And I think in the end, Keir Starmer will be vindicated and people will end up looking very silly.
So when the Prime Minister was under investigation, Keir Starmer said that his position was untenable. This is when he was under investigation, not about when he was actually found himself in a position where he had broken the rules. He said, honesty and decency matter. After months of denials, the Prime Minister is now under criminal investigation, which Keir Starmer is, for breaking his own lockdown laws. He needs to do the decent thing and resign. That's what he said in a tweet, and that was in January of this year. So this was for being under investigation, not for actually breaking the rules.
Keir was absolutely right, and the reason why Boris Johnson should have resigned then was because even before, hang on a second, even before the police drew their conclusions and issued a fine, we already knew that Boris Johnson had lied to Parliament because we already knew that parties had taken place. So Boris Johnson had already been caught lying to Parliament, and under the ministerial code. No, look, Keir was just drawing investigation. Yeah, he's drawing attention to the fact the Prime Minister's under criminal investigation.
Yeah.
But you know, he was already calling for the resignation anyway because Boris Johnson had been
lying. Your leader's also under criminal investigation. Honesty and decency matter. So if it was good enough for the Prime Minister, it's good enough for him.
And the police have looked at Keir's case before, and I've no doubt that they will reach the same conclusion this time.
And he's under criminal investigation. Honesty and decency matter.
They do. Honesty and decency do matter, and I think they're qualities that Keir Starmer epitomises. I believe he's told the truth the way through. I believe he's followed the rules at all time, and I believe that when the police look at this again as they are, we'll cooperate fully. I think they're going to draw the same conclusion, and that will strengthen the contrast between
honesty and decency matter. After months of denials, the Prime Minister is now under criminal investigation.
You can't just keep and read that same tweet and hope I'll give you a different answer. Look, what are you saying? That having not broken the rules, Keir Starmer should resign, while the bloke in Number 10 who broke the rules, lied about it and was fined is still there? Come on.
He's saying that one rule for him and one rule for the Prime Minister.
No, he's absolutely not.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Kate, you've got to remember, back at the time, in January 2022, we already knew that Boris Johnson had been caught bang to rights lying to Parliament. We were already, on that basis, calling for Boris Johnson to go. So I don't accept that because the police are now looking at this again, having had weeks and weeks of the Conservatives and others calling for them to do so. I don't believe that Keir Starmer should be handing in his resignation because the police are looking at it. The police looked at it before. There's no reason to think they'll reach a different conclusion this time. What I do think is remarkable is that the leader who did break the rules, who did lie, who did mislead Parliament, who did pretend nothing was going on, who did take the people for fools, and who did allow his officials to wheel in suitcases full of booze, is still there.
Can you accept at least that this has not aged well?
No, I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. I'll stand by every single word that Keir said back then.
OK. Let me put it this way, then. Given that Durham police are now re-investigating your leader, should they also be re-investigating what happened with Dominic Cummings?
Well, why not? But look, I'm not going to tell the police what to do in terms of operational policing decisions. I don't think it's appropriate for senior politicians to do that.
Well, you are, because you're saying that they won't find a case rather than waiting to see what they say.
No, I'm saying what I think will happen. I'm not saying, police, you must not find there's a case to answer. I'm saying I have confidence on the basis of what I know and on the basis of the man that I know in Keir Starmer, his honesty, his decency and integrity. I think the police will reach the same conclusion they did last time. But as I've always said about the police, they need to pursue things without fear or favour, and I'm sure that's what they'll do, and I make no criticism for doing it.
What if he gets a fixed penalty notice?
I don't think he will, and I'm not even going to entertain the prospect. We've had weeks and weeks of the Tories slinging mud at Keir Starmer, hoping that people will just conclude that we're all the same. There's no point in changing Prime Ministers because the next one will be as bad as the current one, and that's just not true. And I'm not going to get into the game that the Tories are playing with their friends in the media. trying to smear a decent man and to pretend that Keir Starmer's behaviour is in any way comparable with Boris Johnson. Okay. And how Conservatives have the barefaced cheek to come out, you know, gloating and demanding resignations and throwing around accusations of hypocrisy at a decent man like Keir Starmer, I don't know. They should get their own house in order, if not for decency and honesty in public life, but for those hundreds of Conservative councillors who lost their seats because their Prime Minister's a liar.
OK, you're not going to answer this either, but I'm going to ask you.
Why ask then? Let's go to the one I will answer.
No, well, let's see if you will. You may, you know, you're always surprising me. Do you want to be next leader? We've got a list of all of the ones, all of the guys and women that might fancy
I'm sure that by the time there is a leadership election, I'll be too old and people will be looking to a new generation, because after 3 terms of Keir Starmer being the Prime Minister of our country, people will be looking to a new generation. So you don't fancy
being Prime Minister under, or a leader of the
opposition
under any circumstances?
I'm slogging my guts out to make sure that Keir Starmer's the next Prime Minister, and on the basis of the election results we got last week, a remarkable turnaround from where Labour was 2 years ago, I think we've got everything to play for at the next general election. And I think when people look at Keir Starmer, look at the values he holds, looks at the answers that we have to the country on things like the cost of living crisis, the 2 million people that we now know are cutting back on food, can't afford to eat, a Labour government will deliver the alternative our country needs, and that government will be led by Keir Starmer.
OK, well, that's the topic that we're going on to next. It's great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for joining us. Joined now by Melanie Locke, actually. She's a single mum. She's on universal credit and she's had to already make difficult decisions because of rising energy prices. Hi, thanks for joining us on the programme. Tell me about a normal day for you. What can you do and what can't you do, given your limited budget?
Good morning, Kay. So, excuse me. On my limited budget, things that I can't do are having any luxuries, really. It's a matter of living hand to mouth. It's having to budget for absolutely everything, down to the last degree of what my son can do in terms of activities. There's never enough money to cover the basics and the necessities. This is something that I've seen. I've been a single mum now for 12 years, and it's got worse and worse and worse. Even with government saying that they're going to reduce 5p with 5p a litre of petrol, where I haven't seen any benefit to that. Every time that some money comes to me, i.e. I had a pay rise of 1.75%, like most public sector workers on low incomes. That came in one fell hit from a year ago. And it came to about £200 that I got in an increase in pay. Now, that I received last month and thought, yeah, I can have something nice like a haircut, a treat for myself for the hard work that I've done over the year, to find that this month, that £200 has been automatically taken from my universal credit. So I'm at a deficit now this month by that £200, which obviously I wasn't expecting. Like most, when you get a pay rise, it's a nice little bonus to treat yourself and your family with. Unfortunately, I've now got to try and find that £200 out of food, out of petrol, out of my gas and electricity bill, which is just something I can't do. And this has a total effect on my mental health and well-being, because I'm constantly stressed and wondering where I can get this other money from. I've borrowed the max I can from everybody up until this point, because nothing actually supports me when the money's not there. I mean, government's attitude tends to be borrow.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to explain all of that to us. Good luck, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. Do stay in touch. Let us know if there's anything we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.